Hey everyone, it's me Lauren from Speak from the Heart. Thank you so much. Leslie! Hey everyone, it's me Lauren from Speak from the Heart, where I give you all things speech, language, and life. I am a licensed and certified speech language pathologist, and I'm so happy that you are here watching my newest video. So let's hop right into this video. So today I will be giving 6 general tips to make for a successful clinical fellowship year. These are very, like I said, very general. I didn't want to specify too much, but I do hope that these are very helpful if you will be entering into your CFY soon. And even if you have some years to go, I would say still keep these tips in mind. If you're not familiar with the CFY, it stands for the Clinical Fellowship Year. And if you watched my previous video, which I will link somewhere up above here, where I talked about the scope of a speech language pathologist, I briefly touched on the CFY and what it all means. So it's a 9-month period where essentially the individual is working as a licensed speech pathologist, but they are still under supervision. So it is, again, like working a regular speech job, but you just, someone's still kind of rating you. They're not grading you, but they're rating you. If you have any questions about these, leave them down below, and I'll see you in my next clip. Let's get started. So my first tip, this is even before you start your CF. You want to make sure that if you are given a salary that you just kind of feel in your bones is just way too low, that you negotiate. So there's nothing wrong with negotiating. There is nothing wrong with doing your research and seeing what the average salary is for a CF SLP in your area. I highly recommend doing a Google search and seeing what the average salary is, so that way you have something to compare it to, and you also have some information as far as when you go in to negotiate. It's really not a difficult conversation to have. It's just all about being confident and knowing what you deserve. But there are some companies out here that see, oh, you're a CF, that means you're not really like a real speech pathologist. But honey, look, like sis, you have a whole master's degree, so you deserve a decent salary. So just making sure that you are doing your research so you're not being lowballed. So my second tip, this is pertaining to when you actually are in your clinical fellowship year, is to make sure your paperwork is organized. And I mean your rating paperwork, your paperwork to apply for certification through ASHA. It is super important because, things get lost, and, if you don't have copies, it's really difficult to prove that you have these hours or you have this signature from your supervisor. So I definitely recommend making 3 copies of all of your paperwork. So when your supervisor rates you, make a copy of it. Your actual application for certification, make a copy of it. Have 3 copies of everything, because you just never know when something may get lost, if something if you spill some water on it, you spill some coffee on it, and it's ruined. So making sure you're staying organized and keeping everything in a safe place. Definitely stay organized. Number 3, going along with staying organized, is to keep a notebook where you record all of the feedback from your supervisor during your rating meetings. So you should be having meetings with your supervisor quite regularly, but every 3 months, I believe it's every 3 months during your CF, you're supposed to meet with your CFY supervisor, and they are supposed to rate you on your performance with clinical writing, how you document, how you interact with your patients, how you're actually performing therapy. So they are supposed to meet with you every 3 months and discuss all of that with you. When I was a CF, I wrote down all of my supervisor's recommendations, all of the feedback, things I should have been doing a little bit better, things that I was doing really well. I wrote it all down because it helped me to grow as a speech pathologist. So, after the meeting, I would go through and I would really look through all of the feedback, like, okay, what can I do better? She said I did this really well, so I need to continue that. So again, it just helps you to stay organized, but it also allows you to look back on your feedback and see how you have grown, how you should apply it to your clinical practice. It's just a really good thing to put into place. My next tip, number 4, is to ask questions about your rating. So when your supervisor rates you, it is okay to ask, why did you rate me as a 3? Or why did you rate me as a 4? Even if you want to know that, which I think is the highest rating you can get in each section. That helps you to grow as a speech pathologist. I'm not ashamed. I know sometimes I was rated maybe a 2 or a 3, and I'm like, well, wait, I don't really agree with that. And say it like that, like, sis, don't say it like that. Don't be disrespectful. But just ask, I just want to know, why did I receive this rating? What can I do better? Is there something that you recommend me putting into place instead of XYZ? Again, there's nothing wrong with that, because this really is your opportunity to ask questions, because you are still being supervised. So making sure that you're not being shy about asking questions. I've mentioned that before. It makes for a really well-rounded speech pathologist, because it allows you to learn more about how you can improve and be the best you can be. My 5th tip is to leave work at work. And this will obviously depend on your setting, but if you can, leave your work at work. It's just, once you start getting in the habit of bringing things home, and I know sometimes you just can't help it, but once that becomes a habit, it's really hard to break. And I honestly believe, like, when I walk out of my office, like, that's it. Like, work is staying in there, and I'm going home and I'm enjoying time with my family and just relaxing. If you start that habit as a CF, it will be extremely hard for you to break when you started that early on. So again, that's something you can talk to your supervisor about. How can I be the most productive here in the office so I can leave things at home? But I would say just starting, first starting out, being very mindful about trying to leave things at home, trying to leave things at work unless you absolutely have to bring it home. And it allows for you to have a little bit more work-life balance, because you don't want to be stressed because you're working at work and you're working at home and then you're going back to work at work. It's just too much. So keep that in mind as well. And number 6, and this is my favorite one. I think this one is just a really fun tip, is really start to explore and find your therapy style, who you are as a speech language pathologist. This is your first real speech pathology job, and you really start to get into your own groove, like you start to get into your own speech groove, how you do therapy. I know for me, I discovered when I started doing my CFY, like, I'm a really grab and go type of therapist. So I really like to assimilate to the patient's needs. Like, what do you want to do? Especially with kids. I started out with pediatrics. My CFY was with pediatrics. So I always followed the lead of the kids. I rarely had something already picked out, unless, it was just like a really structured goal. But I usually just kind of grabbed and went, past tense version, along with the child, and that just made for more functional therapy. And I feel like that made me more flexible. But there are other therapists that really like to have structured sessions. Like, they literally write out exactly what they're going to do, and that just wasn't for me. Like, that's just not my style. And it's okay, because everybody has their own therapy style. But I feel like during your clinical fellowship years, when you really start to you start to become a little more mindful of what is your therapy style. How do you like to deliver therapy? Do you like to just kind of go with the flow as far as what your patient wants to do? It's just a very, very ideal time to discover and acknowledge that, and you go on for the rest of your career, honey. So that's it. Those are my 6 tips. Again, these are very general. I may make a part 2 to this, because there are many more tips that I can think of. But if you have any questions, or if you are about to enter into your CFY and have some specific questions for me, please let me know. I've been there. I remember my CF. It was a very fun and exciting yet challenging time, but I promise you will be okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and also click the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I upload. I sound like a real YouTuber. Wow. And I will see you in my next video, you guys. Bye.